I would like to ask the Minister for Home Affairs what plans he has to improve the handling of domestic violence cases.
For the Minister for Home Affairs to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy President. Deputy President, I am very grateful for the Honourable Member for asking this question because it provides me with the opportunity to highlight the important work my department is undertaking in relationship to domestic violence. I should firstly highlight the fact that the police and my department take domestic abuse very seriously. And secondly, that we are actively progressing legislation that will provide additional legal powers to the courts and law enforcement agencies. In this connection, my department is currently preparing consultation documents in respect of 2 bills. The aim being to commence public consultation before the summer recess and, subject to the usual approvals, introduce the bills into the House of Keys before the end of this year. The relevant provisions in the bill are intended to include the following: domestic violence protection notices and orders, and address the problem of coercive and controlling behaviour. My department is also examining the current UK consultation on this matter and also the sentencing guidelines in England. In this regard, we will welcome any views of any honourable members who would like to provide additional changes to the law in relation to domestic violence. There will also be the opportunity to respond to the consultation of the bills this summer. Moving away from legislation, I can point to the major role my department has played through the auspices of the Safeguarding Children Board and Safeguarding Adults Partnership in the development of a domestic abuse pathway. This is intended to coordinate the activities of all agencies operating in the field of domestic abuse into holistic services which respond to a range of personal circumstances, bearing in mind the complex nature of this issue. I am aware of the committed efforts of a number of third sector organisations to address domestic abuse, and have met personally with such organisations since taking my ministerial role up. I would also be happy to meet with honourable members of Council or any other members of this Honourable Court who have any specific concerns and wish to discuss this matter in any further depth. Thank you, Mr. Deputy President.
Supplementary question, Mrs. Lord-Brennan.
Deputy President, thank you, and thank you to the Minister. That's really encouraging to hear. Given the complex circumstances that might prevent somebody getting out of a situation, for example, of controlling coercive behaviour and helping them break the cycle, as it were, could you tell us a little bit more about the domestic abuse pathway and whether that would tie in with anything that worked across departments?
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr. President. Without getting too deep into the pathway and the safeguarding board, I think what I should emphasise is what the new legislation will do to give the powers to the police when approaching domestic violence in the future. If this legislation is successful, Mr. Deputy President, I think if the honourable member wants to discuss the pathway further, I would welcome it to my department where we can sit down with members of the pathway and discuss it. Thank you.
Supplementary question, Mrs. Beecroft.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wonder if the Minister could confirm, because it keeps switching from domestic violence to domestic abuse, that the legislation will be covering domestic abuse and will include financial and emotional abuse as well as coercive behaviour. Minister
to reply.
Yes, indeed it will, and coercive behaviour covers, as the honourable member says, a wide spread of controlling of control within a household. So again, I would encourage the honourable member to come and talk to us if she has any particular concerns that the legislation may not cover what she requires it to do so.
Supplementary question, Mrs. Lord-Brennan.
Thank you, Deputy President. Thank you, Minister. Just to ask about the consultation, are there any plans to perhaps handle this in a different way in terms of consulting with people for input into the legislation and anything around that? Just because of the practical issues involved and people who've been through such circumstances, might not be forthcoming in the usual ways. Is there the chance to have something handled differently to what we would usually handle in terms of consultation?
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Deputy President. That's a very interesting point that the honourable member brings up, and it's something I would happily take back to my department. Certainly within consultations, we have lots of third sector organisations who have actually come forward with confidential information that do share it with us. And I think you're dead right that in the consultation we want to encourage as many people as possible, so to protect them would also be high on our priority.
Supplementary question, Mrs Beecroft.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is the Minister aware that Baroness Scotland commissioned a particular piece of research into this very subject? And interestingly, one of the things that it came up with was that for every £1 spent preventing domestic abuse, it actually saved Treasury, government as a whole, £8. If he's not aware, would he have a look at this piece of research? Because I think he'll find it invaluable.
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr Deputy President. No, I wasn't aware, and if the honourable member would like to pass that information to me, I'm sure our department would like to look at this in some depth. Everything is helpful in this matter.